This week on the Droids, we're talking Chapter 11 through 15 of the High Republic, as well as some rumors and news about Knights of the Old Republic, some stamps, the High Republic as well. We're going to get into all of it this week on the Droids. Welcome back to the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast. Alongside Chris and Ryan, I am Mike. And guys, no matter how much it will make me feel more safe, I am not banding together in close proximity with you guys if we need an escape plan, because I am not letting a hyperspace projectile pierce through all three of us at one time, okay? We need at least one droid to survive. And without
true.
Sam on these episodes, we know at least
we've already
he'll be
lost
okay.
Sam.
I was going to say, it's honestly, it's
okay.
a kind of a designated survivor situation. That's why Sam has not been on. We need at least one droid not on the podcast at any given moment.
That's how we're doing
That way
it.
The
no
Speaker
one
of
can
the
go
House
on.
doesn't fly in Air Force One just
This
in case.
thing has to go on forever. So, Sam, we appreciate your call to duty.
A great sacrifice you've made,
And that's
Sam.
duty spelled D-O-O-D-Y.
It's a tip of the loath cat.
Also,
Sam.
we appreciate some of the droids having kids sooner than they were going to, just so that they could pass on the podcast in due time.
Speaking of duty, yeah.
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 Mike, I don't know if
Speaking
you were
of that.
planning on having kids for another 10, 15 years, but you said the pod calls.
No, I met the two of you, and we started a
Yeah.
podcast, and I said, I'm getting going.
He said there must be a legacy here.
It has to be. Well, and as a matter of fact, I did have our oldest do a podcast with me. It lasted 3.5 minutes. I'll send it your way. Maybe we'll drop it in. I'll ask him about Star Wars someday, and we'll
this
drop
a
it in this
plug?
podcast.
Is this a plug?
This is real, but it's a private. I'm not planning
Yeah.
to publish it
No.
anywhere. I'm like, this is for...
Don't email
self-record.
Mike for this.
I believe he said Goo Goo Gaga SJW fanfic.
He's
I'm
2.5.
just kidding.
He
I'm
doesn't
just
say
kidding. That is
goo-goo
not in line
anymore.
with the feelings of Mike's child at all.
Let's stop the hate mail for my 2.5-year-old, okay? All right?
Wow.
Let's just leave it there. Well, we got a very good show here. We're going to continue with our conversation about Light of the Jedi, chapters 11 through 15. For those of you who aren't reading along, we are going to talk a little bit about some news before that, so hang around for that. And, of course, if you've been enjoying the chapter breakdown, please stick with us. But, of course, follow us across all of social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Droids Pod, the Droids Podcast on Facebook, YouTube Droids Pod, that playthrough of Fallen Order. You don't want to miss it. And... of course, on TikTok, you can find Droids Pod. This is new. We are dedicating this episode of the pod to a great TikTok user in Jack, Yeet Squad 009. So 00, he's maybe a Sam guy out there loving some Bond, except he's 009. But Jack, thanks for joining us to listen to this episode, and we're thrilled to have you with us as we talk about as much Star Wars as our hearts can be filled with, I guess, at this point.
Wow.
Wow. You ran the...
Yeah, Jack, this episode goes out to you. And, there were a lot of people in the running, and you won.
Yeah,
Well,
you got
guys,
it.
what does Jack need to know about this podcast? This has got to be his first episode.
If you like Star Wars, you're in the right place.
I mean, you said, check us out on TikTok. I don't think you need to tell the people about the TikTok. From what I've seen, it's blowing
Yeah.
up.
Is it
We
true
may
the
have to tell the
servers-
TikTok people about
Yeah.
the podcast.
I sent them a note. I said, I want to buy some more servers because the content we're producing, it's going to shut it down.
Well,
It
here's the
has
thing.
since become our primary source of income.
We are short
Ryan.
selling
That was a joke.
Droids TikTok to make some money off of.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
Dollar
I couldn't explain
sign
it to you.
DRO.
Yeah. We're short
no.
selling it. Redditors have gotten all over this.
Yeah.
I completely understand all of what's happening.
Yes.
It makes complete sense to me. I shouldn't have to explain it to you.
Yeah.
I'd have to say
obviously-
that Reddit took a shot at the exhaust port of the hedge fund empire.
Yes.
And they
exactly.
hit.
They got it. Yeah. But
Yeah.
now they're quickly building Death Star
GameStop is probably just baffled at what's
too.
going on.
GameStop's like, you know what it was? Like the owner was like packing up boxes in the basement. Said like, do we need these? It's a bunch of like empty cases with discs and sleeves.
My
Are we
shares
gonna
are
need
worth
this?
what?
My recommendation is GameStop maybe save some of the money.
It's gonna be a long winter.
Yeah.
Also, on that note, shout out to our YouTube fans too. We've been seeing some great comments on that. So if you're listening through YouTube, appreciate all the support there, and we promise we'll get you some special YouTube content along with the TikTok content.
In case you're listening and you don't know this podcast is huge. In a lot of different platforms.
The word empire gets thrown around a lot on this podcast, but I never thought it would apply to us.
And here we are.
Here we are.
Well, and droidspot@gmail.com. You're not going to get any content there, but maybe
Premium
we'll respond
source.
to you, and we'll probably read it here on the podcast. And if you rate and review us on iTunes, we're going to read that as well. I think Ryan put it best before we started the show. You ask us to do something, we're probably going to do it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a line, I'm sure. We just haven't gotten to it yet. Well, some of the news that let's talk about before we talk about the High Republic and Light of the Jedi in our chapters 11 through 15. Knights of the Old Republic, one of the classic games that Ryan did a little bit of a playthrough for as well.
There
which I think is still up on YouTube,
some
right?
playthroughs on the YouTube channel.
It's still there, so it all comes back together. It all comes back around.
If you want to see me play approximately 45 minutes of KOTOR, do it. It wasn't, by the way, I had every intention of, I ran into a game-breaking bug.
Oh.
I'll have you know.
Is this related to the GameStop short?
Yes. The game-breaking bug was that I made millions shorting GameStop.
I see.
so
Here,
you no longer
here
had to
first.
play
This is
it.
where it all started.
Well, the news and the rumors is that Knights of the Old Republic is returning as a new video game for the Star Wars Lucasfilm games, new adventures that they're off to as they've opened up what Lucasfilm games can be following the exclusivity of EA coming to an end in terms of Star Wars titles. So how excited are you to go back to that era? And I'd have to think that it's going to be a totally new story. Maybe it takes place in that time, but it's not like it's going to connect and just be a complete refresh of the first Knights of the Old Republic, I wouldn't think.
It could potentially pick up because there is still the online game, and they still do release new content for that in the story.
They do. It is an MMO, so it will be going on forever.
Right.
This is interesting because it's kind of unclear what the KOTOR news is, if it's like a KOTOR 3, which is what people are hoping for, if it's kind of a reboot or remake of KOTOR. Rumor has it that EA, like you said, EA isn't handling the license anymore exclusively, but rumor has it that BioWare, who was the original developers of the first one, and then Obsidian was the original developers of the second one, they are not involved. It doesn't seem, which like, people get upset about that, but like BioWare made the first one and then they didn't make the second one, and then everybody said the second one was the best one. So like, who knows what's going to happen?
Maybe they'll make the third one.
Plus, like, I mean, BioWare, the mighty have fallen a bit, so you know they may not be the chicken whose eggs you want to put in the sausage.
That was a peek behind the sausage.
The podcast is over.
Metaphors.
Anyway, Jack, thanks for joining.
Well, you know what? We talked a big game up front, and
Mike opened by saying this is gonna be a great show. I don't know where he was getting those promises
I
from.
don't think, honestly, up to this point, I just didn't. I had no idea when you made that promise. I feel so relieved right now.
Guys, we're talking about stamps. Of course, this is a great episode.
And unlike every other episode of every podcast you listen to, we're not sponsored by Stamps.com.
Yeah, exactly.
We'd love to be.
Only we get Stamps.com
for all of your
if the
stamps
teaser
needs.
for our episode is, hey, we got some good stamp news coming up for you.
Yeah. And
What
then
is the first-
It's that, you know what? It's specifically that we're not sponsored by Stamps.com, Blue Apron, Bonobos, Casper mattresses, any of those places.
I was going to say, what's the first ad read you ever heard on a podcast? I feel like MailChimp was the one at Serial really ran with, right?
I feel like
MailChimp was
the
big.
first one I heard was it Me Undies?
Oh yeah, I remember MeUndies. I really early on in
Mac Weldon?
the podcast game, it was like normal companies doing ads because no one quite knew how it worked. So I remember like listening to an ad for just like Little Debbie snack cakes in the middle of a podcast once. I was like, this is weird.
I do think the ad read has become a new art form, though. Conan does a great ad read on podcasts.
Highly recommend
the
his
Dead
ad
Eyes
reads.
podcast with Connor Ratliff. Those are some really good ones.
I don't skip the Conan ads.
Yeah. I would say for me the Rolls Royce of ad reads are the Doughboys.
Yeah.
And you know what? Again, we're mentioning podcasts that refuse to endorse us. I'm just kidding. They haven't refused. We haven't asked, but their silence is palpable.
Hey, if you're on Twitter and you want the Doughboys to listen to the Droids Pod, set that up on the tweet.
Yeah.
Put at Droids Pod, at Doughboys.
Hashtag,
you guys should meet.
Yeah.
Hashtag Droid Boys.
Oh, there it is.
There you
hey,
go.
all right.
Hey.
Get Nick and Mitch to love us.
I mean, at some point, the Doughboys have to do an episode when the world returns to normal from Galaxy's Edge, eating some Ronto wraps, right?
Getting
I mean,
some
that's
fried
essentially...
And when they do, we'll make sure that we're there too.
Ooh,
I think that's how it works.
Doing our podcast loudly in the background so their mics pick it up.
Is this how the secret works?
I believe so. You throw it out. They say you throw it out into the universe, but by universe, they mean the mics of the Doughboys.
There it is.
And then it all comes back.
I like it.
Okay.
We get that headgum money.
2022. See you there, Doughboys.
Have we started a thing? Let's start a thing.
I think we have.
2022, hashtag 2022, Doughboys, Droid Boys.
Droid Boys.
Droid Boys.
Droid Boys. Well, back to the stamps.
Hey.
We're going to have 10 different Forever USA stamps of 10 different droids.
Chris is right now the 10-cent stamp.
It's kind of, I don't know how I got on there.
That's just because he's a local celebrity where he grew up.
Yeah, exactly, though.
A claim he really made to me once.
It was more of a clerical error.
Chris said not. I was in Chris's hometown once, and he said not to say his name too loud because people will notice.
I was wearing sunglasses and a hat.
Yeah, you were the lead in a play. Yes.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
Well,
A very popular play. No, I'm just kidding.
the 10 stamps are the droids you'd expect. The droids you're looking for. Not these droids, not the droids on the pod, other than Chris, who has his stamp. But, you know, you've got R2, you got BB-8, you got C-3PO, K-2SO, even L3 is in there, which is pretty nice. But I'm probably going to make a purchase. I want to continue to support the Postal Service, even though it's no longer run by a corrupt institution or a corrupt appointee. You know, I'm happy.
You mean it's
I'm
not?
happy
It's no longer up to us to save the Postal Service.
Yeah, we don't have
not
to,
anymore.
Yeah, save your money now, Mike. It's good. No, I think these stamps look really cool. I'm an amateur stamp collector. I've been doing it, picking them up every now and then. This is a revealing fact right on the pod.
Do you know a lot of pros, Chris?
A lot of stamp. I send a lot of letters. No, I don't know. I love stamps. I like the small little picture frames that they're in. I think these are really pretty cool looking. Like they're very high level of detail for a stamp. I like it.
This is wild.
A lot of revealing facts here. Well, all right. As
Chris
we move
just
into,
took on the like character of a bad date in a romantic comedy, like in the middle of a montage. I like the little picture, and I'm not making fun of stamp collecting. I think that's rad as hell. But Chris's just description of them being in tiny frames.
That's what I like. I like little miniature pictures. That's what draws me to stamps.
I'm being completely serious.
I know.
If you're out there and you collect stamps, I do think that's legitimately cool. I think anybody who collects things that are, you know, they're collecting them is harmless to other people. Like if you collect human ears, I'm not okay with that.
Well, Ryan.
Well, that was very specific, Ryan. Why did you bring up that?
Ryan, I collect these stamps off of letters that I steal from people.
Most of my experience with stamps is them passing by my face on their way to the garbage when I get mail.
That's your
or
association.
realizing that I don't have any.
Those are your two.
Those
so
are my
they're
two
either a
experiences with
stressor
stamps.
or a direct relief. Like, I
Right.
threw that away. We're good. Or I need this.
get rid of these stamps.
Are
I
they
think when I
forever stamps?
use-
They're forever
yes,
stamps.
they're forever
right?
stamps. I think when I get these and I use these, I'm going to write on the envelope, at Droids Pod, listen to the Droids Pod.
Yeah. Maybe
Now,
we'll-
as a stamp collector, Chris, does it
Yeah.
kill you that Mike said he's going to use them?
Well, see, I'm not a stamp collector, so that's why I said amateur. I prefaced with amateur. I just like having the actual stamps, and I'll tell you what, sometimes I like getting the postmark on them, because it can be from different faraway places, and then you know where it was.
Ah,
But those aren't
that's
ones
whimsical.
that you chose, though. Those were sent to you
Well,
or
exactly,
stolen
yeah,
from neighbors.
exactly. So I enjoy that aspect of it. 'cause
So you don't
know-
get
So
to
do you
decide,
keep
though.
those?
Yeah, I got a big stack of them.
I can't tell whether or not Chris is doing a bit anymore.
don't know if
or-
it's
No
a bit or
bit, bit free. True story.
You
True
have a
story.
stack of used stamps. Do you take them off the envelope?
Yeah, you cut them off the envelope. They got to be really nice stamps. It's not just.
What do you keep them in?
I think just like a manila envelope that I have. It's at the envelope's currently at my parents' house.
Right, because it's taking up a lot of room in your apartment.
Exactly. I'm gonna be lugging around a bucket of stamps. I probably have hundreds of them.
And you say, honey, one day these are going to be worth something one day.
Yeah, exactly. You see this bundle of trash?
We're all
This
still.
Santa Claus stamp that has been to Duluth, that's going to be worth something.
Exactly. From all over the world.
Look, we're all still
good
hanging on
hobby.
to our Power of the
Honestly,
Force characters and our
yeah.
action figures, and
I
they're
think
going to
if-
be worth something someday, right?
If there's
That's right.
a hobby to pick up during quarantine, you should look at stamp collecting.
That's true. But wash your hands thoroughly.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
make sure
my
you don't
wife
miss.
is wondering why we still have a big X-Wing box. And I say, that's going to be worth something one day.
Yeah. Maybe you
Don't
can
miss
short
those stamps
that.
for all collectors, new collectors, old collectors, amateur collectors, professional collectors. Get the Droid stamps. Coming soon. As we move into a more serious topic, I think we've been pretty clear on this podcast for many, many years now about being against racism. So, those of you who are new to the podcast, we're anti-racism. And there was a lot of backlash, as unfortunately there are aspects of the fandom that are not great, against the new High Republic show and the host of the High Republic show in Krystina Arielle. And I think that was, sadly, not unexpected with the way that things have happened in the Star Wars universe as of late. But our support is behind Krystina Arielle and Star Wars. We're continuing to support her and anyone who would try to troll her or post racist comments. You are the worst part of fandom in anything.
And we should make a blanket statement where, again, we're not perfect people, but we like to put forth that we are against not just racism, but any kind of bigotry and hate. So not just racism, we don't like sexism or misogyny or bigotry or so. And all of that was present in the lashing out against Krystina Arielle, and it sucked so bad. And like you said, it was unfortunately not surprising. There are incredibly toxic parts of this fandom, and quite frankly, Lucasfilm issued a statement about how they're about inclusivity and diversity, and that's good. That's a step. I don't think that they have been outward enough about this stuff in the past, and I'm not the only one to say this. This is not a revolutionary thought at all. Many of the Star Wars fandom who are on the right side of history have been calling out Lucasfilm for not taking enough of a stance against the toxic fandom. Mostly the theory is because they feel like there's finances at stake if they do speak out against them.
Yep.
And I would like them to push to cast that aside to do the right thing. Hopefully this statement is a step in that right direction, but of course, yes, the droid stand with Krystina Arielle. She's doing the High Republic YouTube show for Star Wars, and that's awesome. And more voices and more diverse voices in Star Wars and fandom is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
it shapes your
it's
perspective. It's a shame. We have the example here of it happening in our realm, but it happens all over the place, not just in Star Wars. So I think it's almost a good PSA here to be like this stuff happens everywhere, even in something like Star Wars, and it's terrible. And when you see it, call it out, stand against it.
And I think in anything that has this large of a fan base, unfortunately, we've come to realize over the last few years how many people within something that we love also either have taken, the wrong lessons from one of the most important mythologies of our time and somehow turned it into something
that's
so evil and oppressive in ways.
Yeah, it's bizarre that it can be shaped like that.
And
well,
also,
no place.
And we've said this before, but people like to. There's this scapegoat that people like to throw out in these toxic communities, where they say like, "Keep your politics out of my Star Wars." That's like a thing they like to say, as if first off, it's posing the idea that diversity and inclusivity is a political stance, which unfortunately it often aligns with a political stance. But the idea that people shouldn't be racist is not a political stance.
Right.
It's normalizing racism to think that it is. So that's one thing. The other thing is I watched episode 3 last week. And this is not, I've seen it a million times, but I was thinking about it while this was going on, that people talking about keeping politics out of Star Wars, when the climax of that movie has to do with a Jedi fighting a dictator who has hostily taken over a democracy so that he could have complete power over everybody.
Did you mean the democracy?
to the republic, to democracy.
And then
so that he could have unlimited power.
And then he also he quotes George Bush saying, "If you're not with me, you're against me."
So with this, like, keep politics out of Star Wars again.
No.
Being a racist and a sexist is not a political stance. Don't fool yourself.
Yeah.
And also, politics have been over Star Wars this whole time. So stop.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think Jack got all of that, guys. So I think
I think hopefully we're teaching lessons here. I think I agree though. Just there's no place for that, and if you see it, call it out.
Well, as we think about the High Republic, we're going to enjoy watching Krystina's show and support her and what she's doing. I actually started watching the show, and then they're about to drive into some spoilers, and I'm like, whoa, well, hang on, I'm only 15 chapters in. But in these 15 chapters...
And that's when Mike went ballistic on Twitter.
Spoiler culture.
It was about spoilers.
Yeah, exactly. I lost it about spoilers, not anything else. But speaking of politics, there's been a fair amount of politics so far in 15 chapters of this book in the Light of the Jedi. So I think it's continuing on a trend and a societal commentary that we've seen throughout Star Wars that is really continuing to drive my interest in reading this. But let's dive into these 5 chapters that we read. Really, we continue to bounce back and forth among different stories. We get some time with characters now. I think we're settling in with this group of characters. We're not introducing too many new ones, at least from what we've seen in these 5 chapters. So, it was nice to spend a little bit more time with Avar Kriss, and then, of course, going back to Captain Bright, his crew, Bell and Loden. We'll talk about that. I think we're all head over heels for Bell and Loden and what they've been doing in their 3 chapters I think we've spent with them.
This book rules. It just
Doesn't it?
Rules. It's so good.
Yeah, it's nonstop. Like, I love the momentum of it, and I think we talked about it the days prior. It's like they keep finding that Star Wars feeling, and whether it's like a subtle reference to a scene, they manage in every chapter to pull out something familiar, but then make a new twist on it.
And I think they're building on the world, too. Like, they're building in interesting new ways where I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm now going to think of this when I think of the Jedi. Not just, like, the vectors, but, and again, we'll get to it when we talk to it, but in the chapter with Bell and Loden, and the way that they're describing lightsabers, and not only the decision to use lightsabers, but just what they imbue in those around. I mean, like, of them, and the fear and the consequences, I think, as they described it. I'm loving that. And I'm feeling like it's continuing to shape my view of Star Wars, which I really didn't think that this book was going to be like, oh, yeah, you're now, when you think of Jedi, you're going to be reminded of this description of lightsabers.
Well, I never thought of kind of the history or kind of the iteration of the Jedi mythology or methodology, rather, through the ages. And so, like, they're doing stuff with like these kind of broader strokes in the past that you see almost more diluted and boiled down like in Star Wars that we know it. So it's very cool to see like, oh, this is why they do this with the lightsaber. Like those actions and things are really neat to see that like here's the motivation for all of this stuff. And it all is very smartly done.
It's very
You know
cool.
what I'm realizing as we're talking about this is like if the toxic part of the fandom has an issue with something in Star Wars, like a book or a movie, like let alone people, but like they've been mad about this book too. That's usually like the better Star Wars stuff that comes in.
Yeah, right. It's a good indicator. It's a good indicator. If 50% of people don't like the book, it's usually going to be good.
Well, I think
Like to me, this is I really like The Mandalorian season 2. This is much more interesting and exciting to me than
my God,
The
yeah.
Mandalorian.
it is. Oh, very much.
And
so.
I'm sure that my Twitter will be ablaze. He said, thinking that his Twitter was more popular than it is. But
You're going to want to go to a doctor.
it's just like to me, this is everything I'm looking for. Like when they called us and told us that they were doing a publishing initiative, like I didn't really think much of it. I was just like,
Yeah.
they got to fill the space with something.
Yeah.
But now I'm like,
exactly.
this is one of the cooler things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a lot of credit to that group that came together, the writers across the High
Yeah.
Republic. We're focused on this one book right now, but
Right.
they all went off and talked about what
Yep.
they wanted this to be. And obviously, we haven't finished what the story is, but 15 chapters in, I think we have a pretty good idea of at least the capability of the storytelling. And so that's given us an idea of where we're headed. Now, the result, we're not going to get a fully concluded story because it's going to set up more of the High Republic. But I'm very impressed. I like the direction, and I like what we're finding out here. And at times, I'm on the edge of my seat. I think, Ryan, you said it. It's hard to stop reading, and we're trying to do 5 chapters at a time.
Yeah, and it
Mike,
makes me
that's just how
excited.
you sit down.
There's the follow up coming. I think at the end of next month.
Yeah.
I think it's. I don't know if that's the follow up for, because I think the one at the end of next, or actually, or in early February, I believe, is more the young adult directed title, and then in June is the next adult title.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. So, but
where
this
we
makes
find
me
out
like,
more about those holodeck restricted
There's 3 of them. It's
videos.
one of 3. It's one of 3, and everything will probably build into this world.
But this makes me like this makes me want to read like Justine Ireland's book.
Yeah, yeah.
The what is it? A Test of Courage.
Which is supposed to be great as well.
Yeah, which is supposed to be great.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, it's Justina Ireland. I misspoke. Justina Ireland's book. And that's supposed to be great. It's supposed to be more of a YA thing, but like that's fine. That probably just
perfect
means.
for me.
I mean, that probably just means that it's shorter.
Perfect.
That's great.
Hey, we're looking forward to all of it. But let's dive in here and let's talk about the chapters that we had. A very short chapter here in chapter 11. But as we joked about at the beginning of the podcast, this is where 3,500 people are on 4 vessels leaving Hetzel Prime. Again, they talked about them all kind of packing together to be safe, to stay as close together. It had a very Battlestar Galactica feel to me when they were describing that, which I thought was kind of cool.
So
and
say we
then, very quickly, and it almost, I don't know, did anybody else get the sense that this was going to happen right away? Like as they were describing it, I'm like, oh yeah, these 35 people don't have a chance. So.
Yeah. Well, based on the previous chapters of this book, anytime they set anyone up, you're like, there's a good chance they're going to get hit by a piece of debris.
Well, and I think there was actually the thing that I don't want to trigger anything about what we're dealing with all in COVID times, but the way that they were talking about it, they were saying no one on the ships knew what it was or when it would be possible to return to their home world, assuming if they ever could. For all they knew, the situation was permanent and they would never set foot on Hetzel Prime again. And I'm like, oh man, don't make me think about a situation being permanent.
Yeah. Yeah, this chapter, albeit brief, this chapter had some profound statements into it, I think, and then just kind of coming back to what we were just previously talking about, I think it ends on such a kind of a positive note where it's just, Avar Crisp opened her spirit as much as she could. She listened. Like, I think that's pretty cool.
Wait, that was the end of this chapter?
Of chapter 11.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking of it as the end of like, oh yeah, the projectile finally hits the surface and hits the water. And
I think, I mean, it's when they're, so the kind of the theme of these 5 chapters is we're discovering there's a hole missing. There's something that's not there. So she's listening. I think that's cool for the Jedi. I think she
listens to the symphony of the Force, the music of the Force she's listening to.
Right. So rather than search and like I think rather than searching and like being, I guess, like kind of like, oh, we're gonna go attack these people, and we see it again throughout these chapters here. It's like, no, we're gonna let the moment find us. It's pretty cool.
Well, she keeps on talking about the bad note that's in the melody or the missing note, which is just, again, setting us up for. I don't know if that felt to me like what we find out later on in this group of chapters where they find out what's heading towards the planet's sun, or, well, the system, one of their suns.
Yeah, they keep giving us options to fill the void.
Yeah, I keep wondering if it's like this is what she's feeling, the disturbance of some sort of villain in the Force that we're going to get to at some point. But I like that there was a little bit of an echo of Obi-Wan in this chapter where she was listening and she heard the silence of all these souls lost to the Force forever, which felt very similar to how it was a million souls crying out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
Suddenly silenced.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the suddenly of silence.
That's right. This is going to be a great show.
Well, we move on from that, and we're back with Captain Bright, Intamin, Peoples, and they're back to the solar array, and they're doing some rescue work.
Don't forget the pill droid.
Yeah, well, actually, as I say, we get our first description of a droid from the High Republic era. And for the droids here, that's an exciting moment. I enjoyed the description.
Yeah, it's good. I like that it was just like it's like a pill with a gem, like a crystal eye on it. Like they made it very simple, very descriptive. One large round crystal eye and a speaker grill below. Like I could immediately picture that in my mind.
Yeah. And Captain Bright has a real affinity for this droid.
It's got a bunch of extender arms hidden behind its sleek panels.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
I picture like a Wally, what's the other droid in Wally called?
Oh, Eva.
Eva. I pictured that, but with no head.
Yeah, a little more analog.
Yeah.
Chris, you should be up to date with my 2.5-year-old's calling of the movie. It's called Robot Show.
Robot Show. Honestly, I was calling it that up until
That's what he calls Wally?
Yeah, he calls it Robot Show.
That's amazing.
Robot Show, that's awesome.
Yeah. He came up with that on his own. He's just like, I want
He's not wrong.
That makes me just want a robot show.
Right?
Ooh.
It's totally about robots. There's a thing called Droids coming to Disney Plus. That could be Robot Show, too.
Maybe we should change the podcast name to Robot Show.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that now.
Okay.
Really kind of free up our content.
Well, as they make their way through the array, I like the moment where Peoples, and we talk about how his species is one that makes jokes at the wrong time. But I liked when he's talking about, maybe the array had some farfar for lunch because it stinks so bad. And I'm like, wait, what is farfar? And I couldn't find it on Wikipedia. So it's a new introduction.
Yeah, I think
it's called farfar?
Yeah, is that what it was? P-H-A-R? P-H-A-R?
Yeah.
That's so close to fart.
Yes. I was going to say, I think I know what that is.
That seems like Charlie may have put it in as a placeholder.
Yeah. I think I know what this is.
Well, Bright, the Nautilin who has his tentacles, also said he's like, my tentacles are almost as sensitive as your nose, which was kind of fun. But then they find the survivor as well as another unconscious member of the crew. They get the pill droid over there. We get a little bit of character judgment call that tells us more about Intamin. And this is my favorite part of this chapter, when he has to make the decision of whether or not to go and work on the ship to try to keep the array to keep it from exploding. And so Bright talks about not blaming him if he were to make the call that they should all get off of the array, but instead he goes to try to buy them a few minutes, and Bright, has a surge of pride wash over him. They have a back and forth of, we're all the Republic, and then Peoples has a great moment of, we're all dead if we don't finish searching the station, and I like that a lot. I thought that was great.
There's also, so they find a passenger that's unconscious, that's a Twi'lek, and there is, it's passed over because there's so much going on at this point, but there is like a sense of mystery about this person, whether that pays off or not, or if it's just kind of, like a brushstroke. We're not sure, but it is like they're not accounted for in the crew manifest. Bright has this moment where he's like, they either it was like either Inman didn't see him, or where it was like maybe there was an altercation of some sort, or he was hiding. Like there's
something up.
There's
Hey,
something.
I didn't even
traps
catch
being
that.
laid.
I didn't even catch that.
It's
Was
possible that
which-
it turns into nothing, but I just thought that for a book that seems intentional, it seemed like this may be something.
Well,
why would they spend so
exactly-
much time saying that it's a Twi'lek? Like, there's just a lot.
Exactly, kind of similar to the end of the chapter where we find out about the fuel source that was being carried by the Legacy Run that I don't think I even took note of when we read that first chapter.
Right. Yes.
And that comes back, and I remember, but
stuff.
I didn't think about it until they brought it up later in this set.
My favorite line of this chapter was, "But whatever droid brain was in charge of the anti-spin system didn't seem to understand that the mass of array had changed drastically when it lost so many arms in the collision." That's a sentence.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
Well, these chapters we talked about how they've only moved forward by a couple of hours. Now we're only moving forward by about 5 minutes every time.
It was 5 minutes a chapter by this point.
These 5 we go over 20 minutes. And so we're getting close to impact, and it seems like at the end of what we've read here, we maybe know what the impact is, or the great disaster, as it's called. But we move back to our good friends Bell and Loden down on the surface of Hetzel Prime. And in this is so well executed, so well designed in the way that everything is described in this chapter. Mm-hmm. I could visualize it all. And yes, this book is not meant to be seen as, hey, this is a scene from a movie. But it's very clear how even things were staged, choreographed. Right. Like, I knew exactly what was going on in every bit of this scene. And it just made me, and I texted you guys late at night just being like, I want the Disney Plus series for Bell and Loden.
Yeah.
I want it. It's great. And the thing I love about this is everything about the two of them so far has been from Bell's perspective, from the Padawan's perspective. And he's got a nice, like, tone and way of thinking about it all. And that's what I love is there's this, the stoicism of the Jedi Knights and the almost audience's voice in the Padawans. Yeah. And I like that from Bell. And Bell, so far, is probably my favorite character in this book.
Wow.
And it's great because, like you said, everything is so clearly visualized. It's so easy to picture what's going on. But because it's Star Wars, it's like, like that's what a book should do. Anything. So it's like, but the key is that it doesn't feel like it's like a prototype for a movie. If they decided to make this into a series or a movie, I would be stoked about it. I don't think they'd do that just because Star Wars doesn't have a history of like adapting its own work. But I would be stoked on it. It feels very different than like, I don't want to, speak disparagingly about a different franchise, but like the Twilight books were like written in present tense, the way a screenplay is. This is not like, and I'm not knocking present tense, but it was just very clear, like, this is a prototype for something that could be a movie. And this doesn't feel that way to me.
No, the scene just happened to be very descriptive of what
and it's
of
just
action.
like,
I mean, how else are you going to write action? I mean, the action's going to be influenced by movies and vice versa.
You should be able to picture something in your head accurately if you're reading it.
And boy, did I picture this. When he throws the grenade up in the air and it explodes above, that was pretty sweet.
Well, I liked it in the description of them deflecting the blaster bolts up in the air away from the crowd. I talked about it earlier in the podcast, but the way they're describing the lightsabers, and I just want to read it because I felt like, to me, this represented what lightsabers should be considered as instead of whir, burr, blow things up. Like, I don't need hardcore lightsaber action the way that I think a lot of people are asking for. It's not about overwhelming violence and aggression. It's about purposeful defense. And so in this, it's described as, lightsabers were designed to end conflicts. They were designed to injure no more than necessary, and in horrible circumstance where death was the only possible outcome, they would kill quickly. No more damage would be done by a lightsaber than its wielder chose. There was no collateral damage with a lightsaber. And that is the measured version of a Jedi lightsaber usage that I think of. And yes, it is awesome to watch when they are dueling. It is one of the reasons why we all love Star Wars. but it also always felt so considered when it was being used, rather than just, hey, here's a bunch of things I'm slashing through.
Yep. When I was earlier kind of mentioning that they're kind of building the methodology out, this was one of those examples. Where like it all clicked when they described this, and then all I was doing was thinking of Jedi battles like throughout this whole part. I was like, "Yep, that's amazing. That makes so much sense."
This is perhaps the more civilized age that we've heard about when it comes to lightsabers.
Yeah,
there you go. Ooh, civilized age. You got me. Got the
blasters. No thanks.
Well, he talks about the hum of the blade, being something that, comes with skill, training, focus, but he imagined it from the Marauders' point of view, and they saw it as consequences. And then part of the point of the lightsaber, that it was bright, it glowed, it was impossible to ignore between the sound and the light. An enemy was given a warning and every possible chance not to fight. And I'm kind of really moved by the way that the author is describing something that I've always loved since I was 8, and here we are, obviously 40 plus years later from originally it being released, but in my time and in 30 plus years, to see it in a new light it's quite an achievement to me, I think.
I'm with you.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, they continue to battle here. The Marauders go back and forth. They're firing on the helpless people.
They went at great lengths to describe how evil they were.
Well, they made that clear.
They're really front loading if they do die though, they were evil.
Okay.
Well, I thought actually it was an interesting way to show kind of how Bell, his kind of how naive he may be to think unless this is just how the book is doing it, but since we are kind of getting this third person subjective point of view of him, for him to just be like, these people were evil, they're just evil, and it's like, that's very simplified. Even in the world of Star Wars, generally, it's not just like evil. There's usually there's at least gray tones, or everybody has everything in them. So it was interesting to see. It's a telling thing for his character to be like, these people are just bad guys.
Right.
It's very simplified.
The simplification was that they were firing into a crowd of people trying to escape.
Right, which is awful.
Yeah.
But I get what you're trying to say, Ryan. He almost, again, in his inexperience, is seeing things so simply.
Yes,
so
exactly.
I feel like if he said that out loud to Loden, they're just pure evil, Loden would be like, well, no one's pure evil.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Well, and also there'd be the level of consideration for what are the Marauders actually wanting here? Do they have their own families that they're trying to?
Yeah, they're desperate. Yeah. They're not.
But
they're not handling it well.
But the thing I think in this instance, though, it wasn't a character saying this, though. It was the narrator.
Well, I thought
that's why I say
Bell.
Third person subjective. There's it is third person, but it certainly takes on the voices of the characters that you know what I mean?
But I think that was a message to the audience to kind of be like, it's if they die, it's okay.
Fair, and that's a different reading of it. Yeah.
Well, I did think that there's been so much of a twist on what good and evil has been as of late. Isn't it just nice to know? Oh yeah, they're just evil. Don't even think about it. Just don't even think about it.
Yeah.
No, there's no one who's going to say and argue that the evil person actually is trying to do the right thing in this book.
Right.
Well, so I think there's, they take out the Marauders, they storm the speeders, then they have kind of a nice moment where, Loudon saying, why did the Force call us to fight today for the life and the light, which felt like something that might come back with time, almost, this rally call for the Jedi, which was kind of cool. And then I loved where, Bell was talking about how he's not quite an expert yet in many of the Jedi arts, but he's being pushed by his master to advance his skills. But the lightsaber, that was something that came naturally to him from the very start. And guys, do we have another Mary Sue on our hands? I mean, who knows how to pick up a lightsaber and just use it? It takes years of training. Come on. You can't just use a lightsaber.
What the heck?
I thought that was kind of interesting.
Gary Lou. Gary Lou.
Gary Lou. But we talked about their kind of battle back and forth. And then I think we get to, you talked about the grenade and how cool that was. But then we haven't seen something quite like this in Star Wars before, but when they pick up, well, Loudon himself picks up the 8 Marauders in the air with the Force, that was beautifully described.
Yeah, like he finds them in the crowd, and then they go up screaming and come back down, and they're not screaming anymore.
Yeah. And then they made the point to say they didn't die, right? So,
well, it's very Batman-esque. You know, Batman's not killing anybody, but he's making sure they're not getting back up.
And then
depending on his life, it's not the sniper one.
Exactly.
Get some real close.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see. They just don't focus in on him after the fact.
But they, you know, in the end of this, they have their little standoff with the Renaki guard again. But they felt like they had an understanding. They must have misunderstood the understanding. And then they kind of have like Loudon fire up his lightsaber at the guards until they then relinquish and open. And actually, it's Loudon who opens the door, but then the guards put down their weapons as they then let them in and let everyone else in. And now they have their chance to go get to the ship and get off the planet before whatever disaster is about to strike.
Right, and then they get a phone call from Chris.
From you
call.
or from another Chris?
They're on the Jedi conference call.
Right.
But let me ask, like, in this chapter, did this feel new enough to you? And I'm not saying that everything has to be new, but is this a lot more of the same of what we've seen from Star Wars? Obviously, master, apprentice, doing battle, doing what they need to do. Did you feel like this had uniqueness to it?
I
thought it was a new take on the concept.
I don't know if I thought it was a new take on the concept, but it's certainly a new, like, we're witnessing all of the adventures that, like, we would hear about, kind of. It's a little bit like Clone Wars, where it's like, oh, like, this is what this is, not that this is a specific thing in Clone Wars, but like, oh, like, this is the business on Cat and Nemoinia, like that kind of thing.
Sure.
So it has that feeling where the thing that's really specific about this one is the circumstances, but also that when this is the first time we've seen in any kind of Star Wars thing a ton of Jedi doing something at the same time, aside from being murdered by clone troopers. So like, it's hinted at in the movies that there are a lot of Jedi somewhere, but we never see them kind of working as a unit this way. So to be seeing different nodes of it is the most interesting aspect. Yeah.
That's kind of what I meant, like a new take on it. Because we're seeing them work as this operational unit. And it's like they are the parts, but it's the sum of the whole that makes this whole thing work, which is, we never got that before. We've always seen the Jedi kind of in this just like hodgepodge of like, this is who's left, and we're always losing power. Like, this is neat to see them. All right, they're the ground team. We've got the guys in the air. We've got the person on the ship with the communicate. Like, we're seeing an operation being pulled out here, which we haven't before.
It's over 100 Jedi all working together to find a way to save both the system and the people. Yeah. And then we've been really introduced to, I believe it's, say, 8 main Jedi, I think, that we've talked to. And then there's been mentions of several other Jedi, but just what we've gotten through so far, and Bell and Loudon and Avar Kriss, Teamy, Mikkel, Nib, and Buryaga. And so at that point, having 8 of them, it's just cool to watch that. And it's not like they're all just sitting around talking about procedure. They actually are out there doing things.
And while I'm reading, I'm adding just different Jedi into the footnotes that I add to the book. So hundreds more, literally.
Chris is telling his own fan fiction story. I think we should add that to each of these. Like, we've got 5 chapters, but one Chris sub-chapter of
exactly
a story we didn't get.
Footnote. Peebles
like
is... I had a Peebles. Do you know Peebles is a department store?
Well, we're down to 25 minutes to impact. Back on the third horizon, Avar Kriss, they give this another moment of all is well again, where, finally no new fragments are appeared from hyperspace. It's not about reaction, it's management now. And we get, Kranara, the admiral, saying he should know better, but I believe the worst might be over. And finally, the personality I liked from Chris, where she says, you should know better to say that. Or I guess she didn't say it, but she thought it. And it was kind of fun to see her a little bit playful.
And he should know better than to say that.
Yeah, you don't jinx it.
Yeah, come on.
Well, and then a lieutenant comes in after she'd asked for a little bit more detail on one of the anomalies, finds out, she can just read him and tell that he's on the verge of despair. It looks like he's about to step off a cliff, and that's where they find out that the container module has liquid Tibanna, which, we've talked about this in the coaxium, the different fuels. Like, can't we be consistent on one of them? But I guess it's a different era. Yeah. But the liquid Tibanna is headed...
Well, like you said, we had Chekhov's Tibanna earlier in the book.
Hey, there it is. Yeah, exactly. It was Chekhov's Tibanna. But that's
my favorite kind of Greek yogurt.
Didn't they blow up the giant squid alien in Solo by dropping coaxium into the black hole or whatever it was pulling them in?
Mm-hmm.
So
they don't drop it into the black hole. They inject it into the fuel line.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they can zip out of there.
So they can go a little faster than light
enough.
speed.
I mean, as the Solo fan I am, I should have that better.
Surprise.
Well down. Anyway,
we can't all be coaxium experts.
The Tibanna is headed towards the star, an R-class star.
Which, to me, would indicate that it's going to blow up the system. If that thing hits, it's going to be real bad.
I couldn't... That's the way I read it, too. How else... What else could be talking about? Yeah. Especially because there's two other suns in close proximity.
Or maybe it'll make a black hole.
And all the systems will be dragged in.
Maybe this is how the Kessel thing gets formed.
We're going to find out how the Kessel...
Yeah.
Well, it made me almost pay a little bit less attention to what was happening in the next chapter because I'm like, oh, okay, so it doesn't really matter if they're about to save the fruited moon or these people because the whole system's doomed. We've been counting down to impact for 15 chapters now. The phase of this book is called The Great Disaster. It just made me think, I'm guessing all the people that we haven't been introduced to, the people on the planets and the people in, the capsules, are probably not going to make it. And maybe the characters we've been introduced to will. But I kind of was like, all right, we can maybe move on here. I mean, it's great that they saved a few people, and I thought there were some cool things.
Unless the rest of the book is literally just like, Terry finally finished his book that day when he walked outside on Hetzel Prime.
They go into every planet gets
just everybody and every single time.
The lush green planet of Tatooine.
Yeah, and then
many lakes,
and then like every chapter ends with like. Before they could even breathe their last, they were
yeah, right. Hoth was so hot that day. Just changed everything.
Well, so that brings us to the chapter 15, like we talked about. So it's the Vector, the long beam. Mm-hmm. They're slowing down a capsule. It's Josh Adrin and Pika, Teamy, Mikkel, Nib, and Buryaga. Yep. There's challenges there. They're trying to pull it all together. I like the description of Teamy's struggles with her own oil gathering and the acrid stink of her defense system.
That was a wild thing to include to the point that I know that she's not real, but I was like, she wouldn't want you saying this.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a very intimate detail. Like, okay, I love. Somehow this book found a new description. I love wires of all sorts. Yeah. This book found a new description of a wire, which is like something I'd never thought of. It got stretched so thin that it became molecular in scale. So it's
without losing its tensile strength.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like such a cool thing. So like to the naked eye,
like Spider-Man.
It would just look like nothing in between the two things. Which is really cool.
Don't drive fast through that thing.
Yeah, exactly. Seems very dangerous. But I'm glad the payoff for their little scheme worked. Yeah. For the most part, and I think it's I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen. This really cleared it up.
You mean
before? Like I thought I had a big hunch when they were talking about like how silken the things were, and then my guess was they were going to build like a big net to catch debris with the magnets, and this changed with new information. Like this was them pulling out that capsule.
Gotcha.
Well, as you said, they were able to pull it off, but then they get the huge flash of alarm from Avar Kriss. No words, just that the Jedi are needed now. Something was very, very wrong, leaving us with another great cliffhanger. And to find out more as we read chapters 16 through 20 in the next episode of the pod,
Yeah.
But as we've stated numerous times, we're very thrilled to be on this Star Wars journey right now.
I'm
Loving
happy
it.
we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm so happy we didn't sleep on this. Sometimes new
Yeah,
stuff
you're right.
comes out, like we'll watch it in a bit. But I'm really happy we're doing this. Can't recommend it enough. It is a good Star Wars treat.
It's a great read.
It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So get out there, take a maybe you could download this one, read it pretty quickly, probably quicker than we're reading it right now, and then you could put together all these episodes and fly through them on a nice road trip.
Yeah,
That's right.
Oh, did
There you
anyone
go.
else catch that there was a nice mention of Captain Bright being quite the flyer? And I was like, all right, we got another
wow.
flyer in the
Jeez.
galaxy.
You do have your solo eyes on. You got them.
Yeah, so time from time
Always
to
looking
time.
for it.
Well, I think that's pretty much going to do it.
We forgot
we'll be
to
back.
mention earlier in the episode, we're still looking for Ronald Araki to be on the show. So if you are or know Ronald Araki, and you are or know that Ronald Araki is an okay person, we'll have you on the show.
Send them our way. Well, that
was
will
my
do
PSA.
it. Jack, thank you again for joining us. This dedicated
This
episode
one's for
to
you, Jack.
We know you made it all the way this whole hour long in a book you're probably not reading. So thank you for that. But that's going to do it. We'll be back. We've got some exciting things. We've talked about it before. We're going to do some Clone Wars arcs discussion when Sam rejoins us. Sam, we are missing you on the pod. Can't wait to have you back. And then we're going to maybe introduce a few new things. We're excited that we're going to potentially have on someone who's never seen Star Wars join us on the podcast and talk about their experience of watching it for the first time. Guys, how does it make you
Harrison
feel?
Ford.
Oh, he's never seen it.
Yeah, exactly. It's Adam Driver and Harrison Ford.
But how does that make you feel that we're going to talk to somebody who's never seen Star Wars before? It just seems odd. And I was excited because I don't feel like you meet enough people who've never seen Star Wars. Maybe they watched one and it wasn't for them. But
I'll tell
sure
you
there's
what,
this-
one
never
is
seen
too
it.
many.
Yeah. What if they start a podcast? Now it's our competition, Mike.
oh boy, what have I done?
Yeah.
What
I'm going
have
to be
I
really hostile.
Yeah. Yeah. We're gonna make them hate it.
Well, look forward to
No, it's
that.
exciting.
We are excited to have on, and then a few other surprises along the way. But we'll be back with more discussion of Light of the Jedi next week. This has been the Droids You're Looking For, a Star Wars podcast.
What a throw. Annie.
That's the most matter of fact.
Paging Ronald Araki.
It felt very serious, kind of in line with the book, the cadence of the book.
Oh, quite serious.
Very serious. Very serious.
We're all the Republic.